Shabbat Shalom. Rabbi Robert Barr here, and I'm delighted to welcome you to another streaming Shabbat service, an opportunity for us to pause, to gain perspective on where we've been and where we are going, to think about our most deeply held beliefs. So for now, put away the pencil and the paper, put away the notebook and the keys, set aside the shovel and hammer, rest. For this interval, no buying, no selling, no working, no laboring, no straining, not living in the past, not planning for the future. This is a time for celebration, for joy, for mirth. We are here, alive, to rejoice in another Sabbath, another opportunity to be together, grateful for our family and friends. With no distractions, we touch and are touched, the great gift of the Sabbath. Again, I'm Rabbi Robert Barr of Congregation Beth Adam. That's our bricks and mortar congregation, and our Jewish community, our online congregation. Two different sides of the same coin. We've been streaming services now for over 10 years. And in this age of coronavirus, streaming services become ever more important. Both our OJC members and our Congregation Beth Adam members are finding being able to connect virtually over the internet has become ever more important. It reminds us that even though we are sheltering at our homes, are more distant, keeping our physical distance, we are connected to one another. We know we're part of something larger than ourselves. We're part of a community, and a community which gives voice to the kind of Judaism that speaks to who we are as modern Jews. That's what we've been doing at Congregation Beth Adam for 40 years, giving voice to an expression of Judaism that's bold, dynamic, and meaningful. A Judaism that, while it respects the past, recognizes that our ancestors' decisions and thoughts need not be our own, that we need to create a Judaism that's reflective of our values, the knowledge that we have, the experience that have informed our lives, that we need to be concerned about the legacy that we are passing on to the next generation. You're a part of that, whether you're watching now 6 o'clock Eastern Time live, or you're watching the service in archives, which many, many people do. Whenever you participate, you're part of this special community. Please feel free to chat. If you're on our Facebook pages, the people on that particular platform can see what you're saying. If you're on our website, people can see on that website what you're saying. But whenever you chat, be welcoming and be friendly. And let us know where you're participating from. It's nice to know the reach of our community. So I'm glad you're here, and that together we can share this Shabbat. Now I'm going to light the candles, and I suppose if you have some candles, feel free to join with me. On this Shabbat, we create our moment in time. We pause to reflect upon our yesterdays and tomorrows, to renew our ties with family and friends, to restore our energies, to refresh our spirits. As the sun descends and shadows lengthen, the distraction of the day gives way to the stillness of night. It's time now for us to see not with our eyes, but with our hearts and minds. As the day gives way to evening, it's time for us to welcome the Shabbat. The candles stand before us, waiting to be lit. We recall our ancestors as we too seek to dispel the darkness and banish the cold, to bring glowing softness, warmth, and safety into our homes. May the dancing flames of these candles kindle warmth within our hearts, wisdom in our mind, passion in our souls. Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or b'Shabbat, blessed is the light of the Sabbath. So at Congregation Beth Adam, we're fortunate that Rabbi David Burstein, our rabbi educator, has transformed our village. And many of you have met him, and whether you watched him and participated with him on some of these services or during the high holidays, you know him. He's part of our community. He's part of our rabbinic staff. Recently, yesterday, in fact, he and I had a conversation about the experience of sending kids back to school right now, whether or not people have kids going back to school or kids at home. We thought it was an important conversation to have because it's becoming so stressful and anxiety provoking for many to make this very difficult decision in the time of this pandemic. So this is the conversation that he and I shared just yesterday. So David, here we are once again on Zoom talking to each other, which is the way you and I have been talking to each other for quite some time, not just with each other, with all of our congregation, all the meetings we've been at. But you and I haven't done a Shabbat service together for a while. And I wanted to allow us to have a conversation with each other about issues that families are wrestling with. It's a family, you're working with a lot of families right now, and to share this with all of our community, because I think it's an important conversation. Some of us, our kids are grown, or perhaps we don't have kids, and the challenges now, because school is beginning to sort of creep up and how people are making decisions. That's what I want to focus on. Sure. But before we get started, how are you all doing? How are you holding up?
We're doing okay. We're all living in the same house, and I think there's been a lot of benefit to that. That we have family dinners together, we have family meetings together, stuff that we might not normally have. My oldest daughter is in college. She goes locally, but she's kind of been back and forth between her apartment and here. And my kids, we're holding together. Mm-hmm. I think that you're right, though. I think that there's a lot of tension in the community and amongst our own community, but in general about what do we do about school. I have one in high school and I have one in middle school.
And I know you've been on there's been some community meetings, and it seems it doesn't matter which specific community. It seems like you've talked to a lot of folks, and I've heard it from people. Schools are gearing up, and people are trying to make this really complicated decision about sending kids back to school. There's the issue of socialization, the kind of education they give, or staying at home and protecting them for health issues. What kind of issues are you hearing people wrestling with, and how are they wrestling with it is the question I have.
I think when it first started in the spring, I think it was just emergency, right? We were in kind of a lockdown situation. There weren't a lot of decisions, and we had to figure out how to teach. Now, I happen to be an educator, so it's a little bit different, but even I was struggling. How do I do fourth grade math, which is it's something different that I learned. But I think that what's happening now is that all these decisions that were kind of lockstep have disappeared. Of course we would send our kids to school, and, they would be going out and getting back to school stuff, and they're getting ready to go, and they're going to learn their locker combination and all this kind of stuff. And all of that has changed. Even if they go back into school, it's going to be different. There are lots of new rules. There's lots of new things happening. There's really different school districts and people that I've talked to, there's different ways of doing this. And a lot of it is contingent on whether the numbers go up or go down, and how the testing is. So it's, and the truth of the matter is that kids get sick. One of the precursors is a fever. So if a kid has a fever, do you think they have COVID? Do you not think they have COVID?
Right.
I mean, and just the whole idea of the known becoming the unknown, and the uncertainty of it is really weighing heavily on people. Mm-hmm. Again, we're not experts. We're not teachers or administrators, so we don't know how it's supposed to be. But they don't know either, because this is just a unique experience.
Right. And I suppose, I know you over the summer, you've been talking to all of our families in our village, and I'm guessing that depending on the age of the child, is influencing how people are trying to sort of wrestle with these decisions, how they're going to decide whether to go back to school or not go back to school.
I mean, there's so many variables too. It's like a horrible science experiment in some way. There's so many variables, because you could be keeping your kids very, very tight and send them to school with someone whose kids are out doing whatever, or you might have someone at home who's immunocompromised, or an older person living with you. And there's all these different things. I think younger kids, I think the Zoom or the technology didn't work for younger kids. And so I think parents are thinking, why are we going to do this? Mm-hmm. You take into consideration that many parents in the United States are two-income families, which means they both work. So do you hire someone else to come in and take care of your kids and teach your kids? And then real practical stuff. Like we live in towns where we pay a lot of taxes for school.
Right.
And if we pull our kids out or we're doing all online, what does that mean?
Right.
So I just think that I think people are just, they want someone to tell them what to do. And usually as someone who's like a seemingly expert in education, I have the right answer, but like I'm struggling with my own kids. Like, and I think that that's part of COVID is that everybody's struggling. So the experts are struggling right along with the people that are asking the questions.
Do you think,
whether it's psychologically or educationally, financially, it's a mess. And we don't know enough yet.
Do you think, have you experienced as schools getting closer, anxiety is going up?
Absolutely. In our house, for sure. But with most people, I think we talked about when the governor in our state in Ohio had shut everything down, there was a sense of calm. It was like, okay, I can't do these things. And everybody else can't do these things too. And since it was opened up, I think in May, it's been harder because everybody's doing their own thing. And you start to, we had talked a little bit before about social contract. Like you start to think about people differently. Like, are these safe people? Are these not safe people? You know, are these people that let their kids play with anybody? Are these people that are going away on vacation? And it just changes that social dynamic. And so for us at our village, we decided early on that we weren't going to open up until February because I wanted to give parents something that was secure and it wasn't going to waver. We're not going to be like, well, we're going to open up here or we're going to do a hybrid. It's like, no, we're going to create a really amazing program for your kids and we're going to do it in your home. So yeah, I think there's a lot of anxiety. You know, and then you couple it with the anxiety, the medical anxiety, the fear of getting sick yourself, and the economic anxiety and the racial anxiety that's happening in this country. It's like one thing after another. So, you know, I think I saw an article which I really liked is that we need to give grace to people on both sides, like the people that decide to send their kids back and the people that decide not to. We need to be graceful with each other and show grace to be like, you know, it's a hard decision. And nobody knows the answer. That's the other thing. Like nobody knows the answer.
No,
so
if everyone knew the answer, we'd all be
opened up and closed at this point. And this is early in August, you know, so.
If people knew the answer, they'd all be doing the same thing.
Right.
I mean,
we're not quite sure if anyone knows the answer. You know, we know the things that we shouldn't be doing that's happening in places. And also like homeschooling would be kind of exciting if you could travel and go different places but you can't do that either. So you're really talking to parents about, yeah, homeschooling is going to be your kid maybe sitting in front of a computer for 8 hours, six hours in front of the computer, and you're going to have to help them.
Right.
You know, and it's the technology part of it too. It doesn't matter how facile you are with technology, like the kids are the ones that are going to have to do it. You know, so my high schooler can figure it out.
Right.
And he was fine. My fifth grader is, you know, she said, I'm worried because I'm going to need help. And so I have to look at my schedule. How can I be available? How can my wife be? I mean, and we're lucky to have two incomes. Like the people that have one income and the parent or a single parent family where the person has to go to work, you know, education this year is kind of a wash, honestly. Like because it's going to matter on what type of education you get. Like, and what if you're a kid with special needs, or you have a reading disability, or you have a learning disability, like, or you eat lunch and breakfast at school. Right. I mean, so there's a lot of pieces to it, and I do think that by the time we get into September and school officially starts, I think it's going to feel better, you know, because you're going to have chosen something, you're going with it, and you're just going to have to. I think the pre-anxiety is the worst. Right. No, I think that's a good point. I think I think that's exactly right. That it's wrestling with the choice. Once you make a choice, you at least settle in and you begin to figure out how to manage it. But I'm interested in your personal experience and the experience having talked to so many of our families about what's going on. Yeah, we have families that are going to be homeschooling, especially with younger kids. It's just to think about a kid keeping 6 feet distant as a kindergartner or a first grader, or, you know, and I've talked to a lot of teachers of those younger kids too. Like, hey, what are we supposed to do? Like, it's all about contact and being close to them and making sure they're okay. You're going to walk up to a child and be like, oh, I can't, like, it's another reason we decided to do it online is because our village is all about that interactiveness nature of being physical and connected to each other. And we would have literally, I had this image of walking around behind kids being like, don't touch that. Don't go near that. Don't go near that person. Keep away. And that's not the message you want to give about Judaism.
Right. And the reason I wanted to talk about this, recognizing that not everybody has young kids anymore or having to make this decision or don't have kids at all, perhaps, is that I think everybody in different ways are wrestling with COVID, and people with families with young kids and kids at home and schooling, it just amplifies it. Those of us who don't have kids at home have to make other sets of decisions. Do we work at home or not work at home? Do we go back, depending on our jobs, do we go back into our workplace? Other folks who live by themselves are wrestling with social isolation.
Right,
I mean, each sort of paradigm has its own set of issues and own set of anxieties. Right now, watching this conversation about when schools will open or if schools will open or how schools will open, I've been just thinking so much about the kids in our orbit, and knowing that you have kids, just wondering how much more anxiety it brings on at this particular moment, and how people are wrestling with all these questions and how the kids are engaged in it. I mean, there's the parents' anxiety, but I got to imagine there's the kids' anxiety as well.
Well, it's really hard for a parent to be a non-anxious presence right now.
Can you explain what a non-anxious presence is for those?
As a parent, you try to keep your anxiety at bay so you can kind of help coach the child through their own anxiety. And the problem is the anxiety by its very nature is often not true, but these are things to really be anxious about. Like people's mortgages are coming due, the food insecurity, this is affecting all of us. And I think that's hard. I mean, because it's hard to keep an even keel. I've talked to a lot of parents that are losing their patience with their kids, especially younger kids being in the house all the time. I remember seeing a couple years ago that video of a guy who was having an online meeting and his family kind of came in the background, the little kids, and we all thought it was super funny. And it's that is reality for a majority of the meetings that I'm on, is that kids are wandering in and out, animals are wandering in and out, people are yelling at their kids. It is and again, lots of grace for them because it's really hard. I mean, my kids are a little bit older. But my house is built where if they're walking around upstairs, I can hear them. Or if they're watching TV in the basement, I can hear them. And I have to have them be quiet when I'm online. And, it's very, very hard. And I think one of the other tensions, Bob, is the tension of wanting to be available for your kids, but also working. So when we go to work, we have the drive to work. We get to work, we have our friends at work, we could have adult conversations, we can go in our office and do our thing. When you're at home all the time, every little thing comes to you. They just know that, the door behind me will open up and somebody will be like, what's for dinner? And I'm like, I'm on a meeting. Can't you see? And again, you feel bad though.
Right.
Because we want to be present with our kids.
Well, I think this is that Going to there are boundaries. Kids go to school, or kids go to stay at home, and parent might go to work, but there are boundaries and there are places to do things, and there doesn't seem those boundaries are less. And while being together all the time is nice, being together all the time is being together all the time, and it can be hard, particularly when life isn't structured for that.
Right, and for the people that maybe are older that don't have kids right now, if you can imagine what that would have been like to be with a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old 24 hours a day, and they want to go and be with their friends, or they want your attention. And meanwhile, your boss is trying to get you to do something for work, or you're closing $1 million deal or whatever it is. And it's hard.
I guess there's a lot of saying no to kids too right now, because I'm sure kids.
There's a lot of saying no to kids. There's a lot of saying you need to figure it out yourself.
Well, they want to do things too. I mean, for as much as kids can understand this, there's a point at which, if adults are tired, how much more so are kids?
Right. And then their sleep schedule gets thrown off, and because if you have kids, sometimes you can't take meetings until nighttime because you have to put your kids to sleep or whatever else. And that's just a challenge. I mean, there's just so many things. And again, like, you could hide your worry about stuff at work. Like, if you were really having a tough time, you get in the car, drive around, do whatever you have to do. And now it's just like, what's wrong, mom? What's wrong, dad? What's wrong? Whatever kind of parental situation you have, and it's and just throw the internet into it, all the social media stuff that's coming in the house. I remember when George Floyd was murdered and the protesters started to move in Minnesota, and I couldn't stop watching it on CNN, and I was isolating myself from my own family because I needed to process this thing. And
so before we end, do you have advice for parents?
Yeah, my advice is to be gentle with yourself. Like, we're all struggling through this, even people who are educators, like, we're all struggling through it, and just to give yourself some gentle compassion and realize that your kids are resilient and you're resilient, and they'll learn what they need to learn. And if what they learn is that you love them, so be it. They can catch them up on math later. And I think just to focus on that and to really start to carve out some time for your family in a real practical way from work, and realize that being together is a really good thing.
Good. Well, stay safe and healthy.
Yeah, you too.
And we'll keep on doing this. I mean, we're planning the year out. We're getting ready for it.
I mean, I think it's going to be exciting. We're going to really be able to do some really fun stuff at our village and help the kids kind of feel connected. And, as we've discovered over the last couple months, it's really contact over content or contact with content.
Right.
As far as, connecting to people, reaching out to people.
I'll be curious in, 20 years. 10 years, how we look back on this time.
Yeah.
And
I'll be curious in a year, hopefully, when we're through it.
Well, I hope so. I hope
what we've learned, what have we learned about human interaction and what's really important to us? Because we're all having to give up stuff. And I think that this is the first time, at least in my lifetime, that I feel like I'm having to give up stuff that I thought was just going to be regular stuff. But everything is much harder. That's the other thing that makes people tired, is that, like, going to the market, or everything takes twice as long.
Right. We have to think about how we're going to do something before we do it. Things that once were easy. There's
a fatigue to that. I've said to my wife that I'm more tired now than I've ever been, just because it's just constant.
Right.
And you just kind of have to figure out space to do that. So
stay strong, stay resilient.
You too.
Keep your family.
I miss doing this. This is good. We're going to have to do more of these.
We can do some more Shabbats. We
play together a lot on other stuff, but I miss these Shabbat services. So
I'm glad. Well, Shabbat Shalom. Glad to see you.
Shabbat Shalom to you too.
Take care. Be well.
All right. You too.
This indeed is an anxiety-provoking time. People are forced to make challenging decisions about their children going to school, about going to work, perhaps. We recognize that everyone is facing their own challenges in their own unique way. But we know, too, that we are a community, and that by sharing and talking, we can get strength and information from one another. So I hope you're safe and you're well, and that you know you're part of something larger than yourself, a community of people who care and value one another. And we continue our service with the sharing of the virtual challah. And we do that as a symbolic act to say that we are connected to one another. So if you have some bread, some donut, perhaps, melted toast, whatever you want, anything that smacks to you of challah, feel free to share it with me. Pull it out now and imagine that we are sharing it together. So as the fingers of the challah intertwine, so do we join hands in our common humanity, sharing the fruits of our labor. We cherish that which has been created through human effort. First, through the work of our hands, the strength of the human spirit, the vision of our minds, that our dreams are woven into the tapestry of time. We celebrate the accomplishments of yesterday and today, anticipating the possibilities of tomorrow. May the sharing of the challah strengthen our bond with others who walk upon this earth. Baruch Amal Kapenu. Blessed is the work of our hands. Baruch Hazon Ha'adam. Blessed is the vision of our minds. Baruch lechem haaretz, blessed is the bread of the earth. And then we continue with juice or wine. If you have some, feel free to join with me. We celebrate the fruit of the vine and bounty of nature as we lift the cup and sip from it. For we are part of nature, which gave us birth and continues to sustain us. Even as we depend upon nature, so do we influence its course. Through the search for understanding, we've gained the knowledge to shape our world. Guided by the best of human wisdom, the compassion of our spirit, we accept the responsibility which rests upon us. With the taste of the wine or juice upon our lips, stir within us a reverence for nature and a respect for human endeavor. Bruchim chachayim ba'olam, blessed is the life within the world. Bruchim chachayim ba'adam, blessed is the life within us. And we say, l'chaim, to life. So for those of you who've joined us before, you know that monthly we have a memorial service, an opportunity when we read the names of our deceased loved ones. So if you have names that you would like to include in next week's service, please email them to me at rabbi@bethadam.org and put in the subject line memorial names. It makes it easier for me to find them quickly. Again, rabbi@bethadam.org and put in the subject line memorial names. And you know as well that we are no longer, we're driving everybody who searches for our Jewish community is taken to the bethadam.org website. We're putting more information there. We feel it's a better way for us to be able to communicate with one another and to share what we're doing. So when you come to bethadam.org, explore. There are pages about our social justice activities, whether it's our climate change projects or our separation of church and state. There are materials about racism in America that we've discussed during services. You perhaps have seen the videos. If you've not, there's a whole page dedicated to that conversation. There are podcasts and other materials that you can use, explore, and learn from. So I'm delighted you were able to share this Shabbat service with me and with each other. And we close with the words we close with each week. May we know blessings those who are near. May we know blessings those who are far. And may the Sabbath bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. Shabbat Shalom.